introduce you. And then, yeah, flash your camera up. I believe we're going. So we got display. We got 20 seconds till we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good whatever time it is, and welcome to another episode of Trevantine, the podcast in which you get to hear the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of an 18-year-old high school being affected by the coronavirus. This podcast, we cover 3 different topics. 1, how the coronavirus is affecting me or us. 2, what I'm doing for today. And 3, the headlines in the national news. So today's podcast is over economics and what's going on in there. So since I am still kind of new to the world of economics, I decided to have one of my more intelligent friends on, Mr. Jackson Kropp. Jackson, would you like to introduce yourself?
Currently a senior at Liberty North there with Trevor, and I'm pursuing a degree in actuarial science, which is a lot of what Trevor was just talking about, and a minor in economics. So anything economic related, it's kind of something I enjoy learning about.
Okay, so you want to do economics, or is it primarily like the actuary side?
Yeah, it's primary on the actuary side, and what actuaries do is they look at a bunch of graphs and predict what's going to happen in the future and what's best for certain investments, specifically related to insurance. Whereas an economist will do the same thing, but it's not necessarily related to insurance. It can be related to anything. So.
Okay, so you obviously have an idea of what's going on in the economic world, especially going on regarding Corona. Would you like to give a little insight into that?
Sure. Well, I would say that the largest thing going on right now is that stocks have been falling over the last 2 months. And I want to talk about the misconception behind this, because I think, especially for a lot of young viewers who are listening, they get this mixed up with that the United States isn't doing great economically right now. If you listen into like what a lot of the top dogs on Wall Street are saying, they would say that what's happening isn't necessarily that large of a deal due to the fact that the entire world is in a recession. So it's not that the United States is being impacted poorly compared to the other countries. We're still the same, I would say, like marginally compared to the rest of them. So the first important thing that I think people need to understand is that we will be fine. It's not a depression. It's just a small recession, and it's happened before, and we'll make sure to get through it.
So, a small recession, is this on scale or on par with 2008?
So the thing with 2008, I would say that this is worse than 2008. Accounting for inflation, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but when we passed a bill to give money to those who were unemployed and not getting their returns in 2008, we sent out about $800 billion. And right now, the bill that just passed was for $2 trillion. So we're giving over 2 times as much money out, which isn't great for the federal government. So for this first quarter, the federal government now has spent $5 trillion. Which isn't necessarily great for them. The problem with 2008 and comparing that to this is that in 2008, you can very easily predict through economics when this is going to end. And we said, okay, here's what needs to happen to get houses to be purchased for a reasonable price and to stop the price fixing. And, a very free country that was hard to do, and that's what led to that. Or even looking at different events like the Gulf War back in the 90s, it was very easy to say, here's how this is going to end, and it's going to end by one side winning. So that's what they can predict. The difference here is that we can't necessarily predict with great accuracy the week in which coronavirus will end. So we don't know, and we can look at other countries and say that, yeah, it'll take 8 weeks, but then you have a lot of other people saying in the United States, it could take a lot longer than that. So the problem there is that in 2008, it was so much more defined on what we thought the next step was going to be. And with coronavirus, it's just hard to really tell.
So, personally, do you have like an idea of when things could return back to normal or Corona even dies down a little bit?
I would say, especially in New York right now, a lot of us look at New York getting hit hard, and it's a pretty bad thing. But for New York itself, it's good. They're getting through this faster. And then that sounds really bad, but because Kansas Hospital right now only has 25 cases, and they're expecting it to go up into the tens of thousands or thousands, the Midwest has not been hit at all. We still have weeks of this left, a long time of this left. But for the big areas, especially dealing with economics, like getting New York back on its feet within the next 2 months, I think that that's definitely possible. And there's a lot of people saying that they think the peak will be within the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I would agree with that. And I would say with what other countries have done and what their numbers have looked like, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Okay. So as we all know, Donald Trump just signed the $2 trillion relief bill. Do you think that will help stimulate our economy?
So this is another interesting thing. So a lot of people use their political bias to make a decision on if this was good or not. The fact of the matter is that it will help. Like right now, within this week, it's great that this is being signed, and that within the next 5 weeks, hopefully we can start either direct depositing money to people. We can get the money flowing back into local businesses that have been shut down, that are still trying to make accommodations for carry out. Here's two problems with that. The first problem is that some families that don't need money are still going to get money. So there are parents out there who make $70,000, which is plenty depending on where you live, to get money, right? So you're making $70,000, which is totally fine to support your family, and you'll be okay without a job. But yet they're still getting money. And then there's people who live off of $30,000 a year, and they need much more than the $1,200 that's given to them. So for everyone who doesn't know how this is working, what the bill says is that any single parent who makes less than $75,000 will get $1,200, and this also applies for household incomes where their income is less than $150,000. There's obviously a lot of details being worked out with inflation, because in the Midwest we make less money than they do on the coasts. And then each kid that you have, you get an additional $500. The problems with that is that with college students being back home, they are still kids and 100% dependent on what their parents are doing. And college students and 17 and 18-year-olds and 16-year-olds in some places are not counted into that. So if I'm 18 and you're 18, Trevor, and our parents are buying our food and paying for everything, the government still is not recognizing us as a kid to our parents, which is the first problem there. And the second problem I would have to say is that the original first reason on why Democrats were originally against this is because they thought we would be throwing trillions of dollars away, and it would stimulate the economy for the next 2 weeks, possibly. But since they predict that the coronavirus will last longer than 2 weeks, a lot of Democrats thought that this wasn't going to be a good decision, because when we give this money out and it does work, what are we going to do in 2 weeks when we're back to the same situation? So that's kind of what we're dealing with now. Personally, I think it's a great idea to give money to people and help stimulate it. But if you want to look back what happened during the Great Depression, we didn't just give people money. We created jobs for people to work. So even though we said, yes, the depression will last a long time, giving people a stable job is a great fix to that, not just giving them a paycheck. And that probably leads to what you're going to say now. Well, why can't we do that? And obviously we can't create jobs when cities are on lockdown and we're in quarantine. So that's what makes this situation, I think, really unprecedented, and makes it really tough to figure out what is the next best alternative to do.
Okay. I don't want to get too political, but do you think what the Trump administration is doing is enough?
I would say in some aspects, yes. I think with Trump being a businessman, I think a lot of his financial decisions that they're making are great, and I think stimulating the economy is a very good thing. So I would say whether like people who have been against Trump forever, I think love and the aspect of he's finally giving us money, even if it takes a couple weeks to get out there. I think a lot of people are gonna. I think that's great for his administration. Let's just say that. The problem, though, I think there is a lot of things that come about to like whenever he declared, okay, we're now closing borders to flights, and we are not, and we're going to make sure that certain cities are in lockdown, and we're going to impose social distancing until a certain date. I think a lot of people would agree that that action was taken far too late, and it could have also been we just didn't know what this was going to turn into. But there were other countries out there that were not authoritarian, that were also very democratic, that just decided to take action under the impression of like, oh, we'd rather be safe than sorry, so let's just take this action anyways. And I don't really think that, like, a lot of Democrats will say that that's what that's what Republicans want. However, I think the problem with that is America is not like any other democratic country, and trying to get Americans to immediately stop their jobs and to stop making money and to stay home, I think is just something that doesn't jive well with a lot of them. So I think Trump's doing a lot of great things, and I think obviously his administration can do more. But if there were a Democratic president in office right now, I think we'd be saying the same thing. They could be doing more. They have made some poor decisions, but they've also done a lot to, try to help solve the situation.
I like that take. That's a good take. Kind of to circle back around onto the Trump bucks, the money that will be receiving. Do you think people will, like you said, in the 2 weeks after the economy is stimulated, people would start wanting to rely on government aid when it comes to money like this?
That's a pretty good question, because I think naturally there's a lot of people who don't want to rely on the government. Like that's a huge thing about America, is that we don't, like, we are who we are, and we don't need the government to help in or step in and help with us. But I think knowing that the government is able to help step in when we need it, especially as a country where it's estimated that 90% of the country could be getting some sort of monetary benefit, I think there's going to be a lot of push on like, hey, this is actually a pretty good thing, and maybe not for like a long term. Like, obviously, I'm not going to get into the debate of like welfare and monthly checks of that sort, but I do think that like when this sort of thing happens, giving the money to people is going to change their mind, because there was a lot of people when this whole thing started. And everyone saw the post on Facebook where they were afraid that no money would ever actually happen. And the House voted it down, and they said, okay, it's just not going to happen. We're not going to get any money out of it. So the fact that this is actually happening now, I think is great for the Trump administration, and it's great for people, whether you like him or not, who need the money right now.
Okay. Now here's one of the biggest questions: big business, small business. A lot of big businesses are getting relief and payout, and they can just write it off in their taxes, while many small businesses like Hammerhand Coffee or Messenger are getting like absolutely hit the hardest. What steps could be done to, I guess, help out the small businesses in this time of crisis?
There's a lot of agencies that deal with when you go into debt and file bankruptcy, and I don't know a lot. Like, I know them on the like person to person of like, if I were to go file bankruptcy, I study a lot of the microeconomic side of things, not necessarily the macro. But what I have heard, at least, is that when large businesses decide to file bankruptcy, and they're able to say, hey, we have over this percent of employees not working, they're able to claim these things from the government. I think there's these outside private agencies that are trying to set up, not like a union, but something to where they can take like a national stance to like, hey, this is a problem too. Like, all of these local businesses within this area are being affected harder than even the larger businesses are. And I think that they legitimately stand a great chance on winning that case, because there are so many more people when you combine all the small businesses together working from things like up on the Liberty Square than there are working for places like Walmart, who are still staying open. And I think that's another thing too that people just don't really understand is there are large businesses shutting down and large businesses claiming money, but there are a lot of large businesses that are still open because they need to be. They're not even close to that amount of small businesses that are still open. And like you said, Hammerhand, I mean, technically, yes, they're still open, but their revenue is just way down. It's only the curbside. There's a lot of places doing that. So, and the debate between small business, large business, I think as long as small businesses understand that if they get through this and they can stay strong through it, even if they have to file bankruptcy or go through one of these private firms to help fight their case, when they do get out of this, it's like what we were talking about with stocks earlier. The stocks will go up exponentially like we've never seen before. And the same thing with, I think, the revenue that they're bringing in. And simply because of like kind of the psychology factor of, I haven't gone to Hammerhand in 3 months now. Now I'm going to go, and everyone going at once, I think it's going to be great. So as long as the small businesses can keep their mindset of, we have to stay in this. We only have X amount of time left. I think that's what's going to be best for them.
All right, nice. And I guess this really comes to my last question. When stocks were at their lowest, did you invest anything?
So I actually put a little bit of money into, it's not the official stock market, but if you go onto Robinhood is an app. You have to be 18 years old for it. And it is a great way to teach you how to use stocks, how to buy stocks. It's pretty low risk. And you get a free share. And I was hearing from a friend about someone who got a free share in like AMC theaters, which is not great because no one's going there right now. I actually got a free share in Peloton, and if you don't know, I didn't know what Peloton was when I got it. And it was a pretty like low stock. I turned 18 last August, but Peloton is like an exercise company that does. They do a lot of things, but Peloton's doing pretty good right now due to the fact that everyone's home working out on their Peloton bikes. People are buying those and shipping them into their house. And with gyms being closed now in most places, they need to work out from home. So have I invested in anything since then? No. But my Peloton, my one share of that's doing great. And one more thing I have to say, and obviously if you're listening and you're thinking about investing, there's a lot of things that go into it. But if you already have money invested, the number one thing I can suggest is to leave your money in there. So Pence said that the economic fundamentals are staying strong despite the coronavirus. And I think the reason that's huge to listen to Pence on this, whether you normally listen to him or not, is as long as the economic fundamentals stay strong and we don't do what we did and everyone takes their money out of the bank and freaks out, that's where we're going to go into a depression. If you leave your money in there, what's going to happen? I can guarantee it. So let's just say you bought, I bought my one share of Peloton, let's just say for $10. And what's happening right now is that my share is less than $10. So let's just say my share drops to $5. There's a lot of people who freak out, Trevor, and they say, my share is only worth $5. It's dropping. I'm going to sell that share and get my $5 back before I lose all 10. The reason you don't want to do that is because eventually, when all of this is over, it's going to go up to, my one share will be worth $20, and I'll eventually have more for that share than I did when I originally bought it. The problem is you've got to trust that it's going to happen. And I was actually talking to one of my math teachers, Mr. Barnard, about that. And he said the same thing, like if you do own shares or you do own stock and in some regard, leave it in there, because eventually, it's not great that it dropped 1,000 points. It's not only going to raise 1,000 points, it's going to raise 1,500 points or 2,000 points. And eventually you'll have more money than what you started with. So that's my advice for anything dealing with like the stocks that you might have or stocks that your parents have. Don't let them freak out either. and start selling off their stocks. That's just not a great thing to do right now. And if you decide to sell off your stocks, someone else is going to want to sell theirs off. And then when everyone sells it off, that's when we have much worse problems than what we're going through right now.
That's yeah. I mean, isn't that really how the stock market crashed in the first place here a couple months ago?
Yeah, everyone freaked out and saw that, oh, here's what's going on in China. I'm just going to sell my stock that I bought for $10 and get my $10 back. And what you have to understand is that it goes in cycles. And sell your stock when it's at the very highest that it's worth. Don't sell your stock when things are going wrong. And that's what we learned with the Great Depression. It obviously wasn't the same with stocks, but with the value of someone's $1 bill, they saw everything dropping. They thought, I need to take my money out of the bank. And looking back, we now know that that's just not what you should do. You should trust it, know that it's gonna be in a cycle and it'll come back, and probably stronger than what it did before.
Awesome, dude. I love that advice. That's good to hear. Did you have any major thoughts or anything you wanted to get across before we end off our conversation here?
No, I just think if you are 18 or you're a college student and you really are dependent on your parents and you're not getting the $500, it's really tough. But again, the difference with this is everyone's going through it together. And when other bills like this have been passed for hurricane reliefs or wars, it normally is only a certain part. But the whole country's in this together. The whole world's in this together. So I think the best thing to do is know that, yeah, your stocks are lowering. Yeah, prom is getting canceled or whatever is going on with all this different crazy stuff. Just know that everyone's going through it together. So I think that's something just for people to mentally stay sane with all of this that's going on.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the advice, dude.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. I'll have to get you on when things change a little bit, see the other side of it and get some more insight.
Yeah, it'd be cool to kind of see what's going on in 2 months and see if some of these things held true, and hopefully that we're doing better than we are now.
Let's hope, man. Well, Jackson, it was nice speaking to you, man. Keep washing your hands, dude.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, thanks so much. Stay safe.
Anytime. You too, man. You have a good one.
You too.
And that was the famous Jackson Crop. What a man. Man, the myth, a legend. He's another great person to talk to. He was one of the DECA students with me who's enduring the huge DECA loss of DECA State and everything. And that kid's one of the smartest people I know too. I find it fascinating that he figured out what he wanted to do very early. Actuarial science. He wanted to be an actuary. That's a job that no one really knows about, especially in high school. And for him to he planned everything out whenever we were like sophomores in high school, and he was talking to me about his plan and stuff, and it was so cool to see that he had everything mapped out. He had a good grasp on everything, and it's good to see this stuff. He's wicked smart. He's taking a bunch of like AP math classes and stuff, so I'm glad to hear his side of things and to figure out what he thinks about the economics and what's going on in the world. But yeah, it was a good conversation, man. I love talking to people when it comes to this. So now we're in our second part of the show where we read the headlines from the New York Times. Here's just the major headline saying that as governors plead for tests, Trump promises ventilators to Europe. Maryland, Virginia, and Arizona issued statewide stay-at-home orders, and the FDA granted emergency approval for the use of 2 malaria drugs to treat some corona patients. Here's what you need to know. Trump suggests coronavirus testing is no longer a problem. Governors disagree. Trump apparently thinks that he sent out enough testing kits and that we don't really need to make any more, but apparently major governors in these major states aren't agreeing with that. So that's okay. There comes once again a huge thing when it comes to supply and demand. Maybe I should have talked to Jackson about this, but yeah, when it comes to supply and demand and quality over quantity, because whenever we're trying to pump out all these different tests, the quality is obviously going to go down because we're trying to make them as fast as we can, as many as we can. And whenever we see this mass influx, it causes a problem in which we don't have the same quality control that we used to. And at a time like this, when we're all trying to figure out how we can help and what we can do to make things the best, we're gonna start losing quality. Excuse me. We're gonna start losing quality in return for this mass quality or quantity. So that's where the offset happens, and that's when things get a bit foggy. Next headline is: despite scant evidence, the FDA granted approval to use two malaria drugs. This has been a huge thing in the news. Basically, Trump talked about two malaria drugs, and he started like promoting them, and then people were taking them, people were getting sick and stuff. But now it says the Food and Drug Administration granted emergency approval this weekend, permitting the use of two long used malaria drugs to treat patients who were hospitalized with the coronavirus, despite scant evidence that the drug would be effective against the virus. Going through generic drug makers, Sandoz, a division of Novartis, donated 30 million pills of hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, I'm not a I'm not a biology major or a biology student by any means, so that's not a great read, but whatever that drug is. And then Bayer donated 1 million doses of chloroquine, something like that. And they're just trying to, I guess, use this to stimulate a drug that could help potentially. Next headline is: Massachusetts veterans' homes sees a rash of deaths. That's hard to hear, and that's what's gonna suck is that with the coronavirus, we're still seeing a lot of people dying, and like Jackson said, it could be 2 weeks, could be 3 weeks. Hopefully, it's in the next 2 weeks in which we hit our peak for deaths in America, and then we start seeing that number decrease, or people even being tested and tested positive for the coronavirus. But yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep seeing it until people social distance and people start flattening that curve, like that's always been saying. I feel like that's definitely gone down in the news. Less people are talking about flattening the curve, but it's something we got to do, and we just got to play our part. Next headline is: amid debate over face masks, Austria says that it will require them in grocery stores. So apparently, you need to go to when you go to grocery stores, you need to be wearing a face mask. Yesterday, I went to the grocery store to pick up some fruit and a couple other groceries, and that was the weirdest thing, my dog. Yeah, I drove there. I ran into one of my friends. He was doing a photography project. He bought a bunch of newspapers. He's gonna hang it all over his wall, take pictures. Pretty cool guy. Can't wait to see those pictures. Maybe I can show them up on here pretty soon, or actually get him on this podcast. But yeah, I ran into him. Then I walked into the store, and then the first thing I noticed was everyone wiping down their carts with the sanitation wipes, which no one ever used before until like I guess now. And I saw that, and it's like super meta to think that, like, in middle school I used to be a huge germaphobe, and now like I lost that germophobia kind of thing, but now it's like a good thing to kind of be cautious about. But yeah, I noticed everyone wiping down their carts and baskets, and that was really weird. And then the second I walked in, I saw a lot of people wearing like latex gloves and then wearing masks, and that just felt super weird. And like when you go to the grocery store, it's usually way different. It's like, oh, you bump into someone, oops, my bad, or you just like get close to someone on accident, and then like it's not even a big deal. When I was going through the meat section, everyone was keeping their distance, bro, and like I guess that's good. That's literal social distancing. But it was just like such an unreal thing, And at the end of my grocery store visit, I walked up to the cash register, and they drilled in like plexiglass blockers for the cashiers, and I thought that was kind of ridiculous because I mean I'm gonna put my food on the conveyor belt. It's gonna go through all the food and stuff that I've touched, coughed on, maybe did whatever, sneezed on. The cashiers are still gonna touch it, but they're gonna put this plexiglass in between us, so it's like I don't cough on them, I guess. And then right next to the plexiglass was the card reader, and I had a perfect view of the cashier still. So it made absolutely no sense for that to be there. Another interesting thing is they implemented tape lines, so you like were, I guess 6 feet away from the person getting their groceries checked out. So that was weird. And it's crazy. And then I mean, of course, the cashier was like just drenching their hands in hand sanitizer, which is a good thing because I mean that's their sanitation that they need. But that was such an odd experience I had. It didn't feel real, and it was just super super strange. Our next headline is that the virus's impact expands. Washington mulls more emergency measures. I actually want to read that. The next headline is we don't know who the person was. That's a very vague headline. I'm not going to click on that. Probably some clickbait stuff that we always see. And then the last one is as briefings become a showcase, Trump calls on a friend. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to do the virus impact and then Trump calls a friend because Trump has a lot of friends, obviously, and I want to know what friend he called up. But let's see, which headline is this? That's the FDA. Here's more emergency measures. It says, as the toll of the coronavirus continued to mount, overwhelming hospitals and sickening healthcare workers spreading through the jails, playing havoc with the economy and making deadly inroads in more cities, federal lawmakers and Trump administration officials turned their attention on Monday to new measures to try and contain the fallout. And a sign of how fast the virus is upending life in the United States, officials in Washington were already beginning to chart out the next phases of the government's response on Monday. Nancy Pelosi said in an interview on Monday that state and local governments urgently need to do need more resources, and it was only a matter of time before Congress would enact its fourth relief measure. Representative Nadia Valinsky, I don't even want to try and pronounce her name, Democrat of New York, announced that she has received a diagnosis of presumed corona infections. I don't really know what that has to do. Yeah, that's another clickbait article. It really didn't tell me anything, but yeah, apparently people are calling, or at least Nancy Pelosi is calling for more aid, more help with the coronavirus and trying to make things better. And then Trump calls a friend. Club, blah 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 blah. Yeah, it really doesn't help me. Mr. Lindell. Trump lashed out on CNN. Yeah, not great articles, but yeah, that's basically all the headlines. New York Times clickbaity. I feel like in a time of panic like this, if you have clickbaity titles and misleading titles, it's not a great thing to have. But here's another thing that I'm not sure I can really do, but we'll peep it out because I think it's interesting. But there are pictures of the streets of New York being empty, and I think that's something I want to cover. I lost my mouse, so that's interesting, but let's peep this out together because we're all in this together. I legitimately don't have a cursor anymore. But yeah, New York was not designed for emptiness. And just scrolling through, I don't want to read this article. These pictures are crazy to see. It's weird. I know even in the Liberty Square, going through and seeing like no one there is just super surreal. Because you don't see anyone anymore. Look at this. This ferry is empty, bro. That's crazy. I mean, obviously people still need to travel, but that's weird, dude. Cemeteries, I've never really seen one that's busy. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I guess when you live in the epicenter of the coronavirus, it's big. This picture could have been taken whenever, dude. Like, it could have just been a bad day. Bridges, grocery store shelves being empty. Looks like an Asian food restaurant, maybe? I'm not too sure. Pizza parlor, that's what it is. Going through, these people have horses now. That's cool. Food markets are interesting. Nice bandana. That's going to stop the coronavirus. I love this picture with the mirror. That's really cool. Yeah, and that's about it, man. That's all the articles I have for you there. Let me get back to my beautiful face. I legitimately lost my cursor. How is that possible? Here we go. All right. Now that disaster happened. Yeah, that's crazy. It's just weird to think that these super populated places are just empty. I saw a TikTok the other day where he was walking through the streets of New York, and it was no one out there. And it was like the middle of the day too, so it's crazy to think. But yeah, that just about covers it. My cursor's back, so that's cool. That just about covers it for the headlines today. Now is our third section of the podcast where we talk about what I'm doing today. So this morning I woke up about 8 a.m. A little later, a lot later than I normally wake up. I slept through my alarms. My phone alarm like went off. I don't remember hearing it, but like I woke up at 8. I'm like, did I wake up before my alarm or did I wake up after my alarm? And then the moment of truth, I flipped it over, and it was like doing the alarm thing, like where your screen gets like dimmed sort of, and then you have the buttons for the alarm, and it was ringing, but I didn't hear it. And then my other alarm, my alarm over here by my bedside, that didn't go off either unless I hit it and just went back to sleep. But yeah, that was very disappointing. I went up. I only did a 1.75-mile run because I needed to do my workout really quick. In the middle of my workout, someone texted me, said my physics teacher was going live on Google Hangouts, so we had our little chat. That was a very interesting experience. I don't want to at him or anything, but that was really fun. I love my physics teacher. He's one of my favorite teachers I've ever had. But yeah, I did that. I got ready, did this podcast, made another protein smoothie. I'm about to go grill up some brats. I feel like my diet's just been a lot of barbecue food lately, which is good because grilled, but I don't know. I just gotta change things up sometime. And then I think we're gonna have some enchiladas tonight. So good stuff coming our way. And then after that, I'm gonna probably sit on my deck, do some homework. I did half of it yesterday, so I'll do the other half today. Grind that out, and then I might do some more reading. Yesterday, my podcast I talked about reading a little bit, and I did it. I read 8 pages of The Great Gatsby, and then I passed out. Apparently, I was that tired, but I fell asleep for like an hour and a half, and then I just played Minecraft. But I definitely might start streaming Minecraft on my Twitch. Someone was telling me about Streamlabs OBS, so I might do that. I've been doing OBS Studio lately. That's how I've been getting this out onto YouTube. But I'll check that out. I also need to upload my podcast onto Anchor. I have a little checklist here. Mr. Crippy Crop, the person who I had here on here talking about economics, told me that he listens to it on Spotify, and I haven't uploaded it on Spotify in a long time. I just got really lazy, to be honest. So I'll start uploading those to Spotify again. Just Trev Talk Spotify. And yeah, that's about it. So that was today's episode of Trevantine. A little rough when I came to showing the pictures of New York. I don't know why that was so rough. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is going to be the way it is for a while. Keep washing your hands, and I will, see you guys tomorrow. Peace.